I learned my most important business lesson on the day I nearly crashed an airplane. I was a student pilot working toward a private pilot's license, and the day had come for my first long-distance solo flight. I'd be flying alone to an airport far from home, and with barely 20 hours of actual flight time under my belt, I was more than a little nervous. Hundreds of miles lay ahead, and the only companionship I would have once airborne was a well-worn bank of instruments in the cockpit of my little two-seater airplane. All seemed well just after takeoff, but before long, I noticed an unfamiliar light on the instrument panel. Low voltage, it said. I wasn't sure what that meant. They don't teach new pilots much about the plane's mechanics. I tapped the light, hoping it was just a glitch, but nothing changed. Unsure how to respond, I did what seemed natural at the time. I checked every other instrument for anomalies. My airspeed and altitude were good. The navigation aid told me I was perfectly on course. The fuel gauge showed plenty of gas. All these instruments were telling me I had nothing to worry about, so I accepted that consensus and effectively let the other instruments outvote the low voltage light. I ignored it. It couldn't be too serious if nothing else was amiss, right? This proved to be a very bad decision. It eventually left me completely lost in a storm with no lights and no radio, nearly out of gas, and violating controlled airspace near an international airport. And this near catastrophe started when I outvoted the low voltage light, which, it turns out, was tuned into different information than all of the other instruments. Even though it was a minority voice, it was one I really needed to listen to at that moment. Dismissing its wisdom just because my other instruments didn't see any trouble was a short-sighted decision that could have cost me my life. Fortunately, I did make it down, shaken but unharmed, and in the months that followed, as I reflected on the decisions I had made that day, I came to an interesting conclusion. I was still making the same mistake. Not in my plane, but in the team I was supposed to be leading at work. In fact, the near-fatal error made in the cockpit is one made on a daily basis in most organizations. An organization, like a plane, is equipped with sensors, not lights and gauges, but the human beings who energize its roles and sense reality on its behalf. Too often, an organization's sensor has critical information that is ignored and therefore goes unprocessed. One individual notices something important, but no one else sees it, and no channels are available to process that insight into meaningful change. In this way, we often outvote the low voltage lights of our organizations. Our organizations become aware of whatever they need to respond to in their world through our human capacity to sense the reality around us. And we humans are all different. We have different talents, backgrounds, roles, fields of expertise, and so on. So we naturally sense different things. Where there are multiple people, there are multiple perspectives. Yet, on most teams, critical perspectives that aren't shared by the leader or by the majority are often ignored or dismissed. Even when we intend to do otherwise, we don't have a way to integrate different perspectives, so we end up falling back in line with the leader or the majority. We outvote the person who may have key information that we need to keep on course or move forward. I've always been fascinated by how we organize, how we humans work together in pursuit of a purpose. Before I started my own business, I was often frustrated when I sensed something that wasn't working or that could be improved, only to find there wasn't much I could do with that awareness, at least not without heroic effort in the face of bureaucracy, politics, and long, painful meetings. I didn't want to just complain. I wanted to help. I wanted to process that sense I had into meaningful change. Yet I routinely encountered big obstacles to doing so. I learned early on that if the boss didn't share my frustration and I couldn't convince him relatively quickly, I might as well forget it. The information I was sensing was not going to have much impact. And if I was the low voltage light, then the organization was in trouble. The human capacity to sense dissonance in the present moment and see the potential for change strikes me as one of our most extraordinary gifts. Our restless, never satisfied, creative spirit that keeps us always reaching beyond where we are. When we feel that sense of frustration at a system that's not working, or a mistake that keeps getting repeated, or a process that seems inefficient and cumbersome, we are tuning in to a gap between how things are and how things could be. I call this a tension because that's often how it is experienced, but I don't mean the word in a negative way. We might label this state a problem that should be fixed, or we might label it an opportunity to harness. Either way, that's just us projecting our meaning-making on the raw experience I'm calling a tension, the perception of a specific gap between current reality and a sensed potential.